Hi, Govanen. That means well met in Elvish. And I'm the Tolkien Geek coming here from the Tolkien Lore channel, and I've had several requests for a video going over Elvish words and phrases, and so who am I to deny the listeners? So we're going to talk about some Elvish words and phrases that you can pick up from the book. I've already done a video in the past on how you can go about learning Elvish yourself. And so if you really want to get in deep, I recommend you go check out that video. It will be in the description below. I'll link to it. But for this video, I'm just going to go over some really basic stuff that you can pretty easily pick up just from reading something like The Lord of the Rings by itself. So as far as phrases, unfortunately, there are not too many that we can pick up. I mean, you can't really get conversational in Elvish without really getting into the weeds of learning the language. But if you want to pick up some just really simple stuff, there are a few, of course, that are directly translated in The Lord of the Rings itself. We do get Maigovanen, as I mentioned, is well met. Namarie, which is the way I usually end my videos, means farewell. We get that a few times, actually. And the two longest phrases I think that we get outside of just long poems translated from Elvish into English would be Aya Eärendil Elenion on Kalima, which basically means Hail Eärendil, brightest of stars. That's the phrase that Frodo uses when he pulls out the glass, the phial of Galadriel in Shelob's lair, and that's kind of what makes it really get bright and start really working. And of course, Eärendil is the name of the star whose light is captured in the phial. And then the other one happens much earlier when Frodo meets Gildor in the Shire, and he says, "Sila lumen oment no, Ellen sila lumen omentielvo," which basically means, "May this a star shines upon the hour of our meeting." So you can pick up, from these what the different words mean. Of course, Eärendil is easy; it's not even a translated word; it just is what it is. Aya means hail, hail Eärendil, brightest of stars. So we got Elenion on Kalima. Elenion is obviously the word that's stars, because Elen or something like that root word comes in to basically anything, not quite anything, almost everything star related. And it forms the basis of the word Eldar, which is the name of the elves for themselves anyway. So Ankalima necessarily means the brightest. And then in the other phrase, we get Ellen Sila Lumen Omentielvo. Ellen, again, star. So we're already off to a good start there. So the rest of it, Sila Lumen Omentielvo, we have to kind of piece that together a little bit, but you can kind of get a feel for the grammar and whatnot if you pay enough attention to the Elvish languages that get used in poetry and whatnot. So Sila is almost certainly shines. And then, of course, the hour of our meeting, which one of those is lumen and which one is omentielvo, not really sure there. And of course, I could be wrong about that. I haven't studied the Elvish grammars or anything enough to really know for sure. I'm just telling you, this is kind of how my process of thinking works, so you can pick stuff up. Another really good way to pick up Elvish words is just to look at the map, because a lot of the times the map will give you a name of a place, and if it's an Elvish name, it almost certainly has an English name, which is basically a direct translation. And you can do this a lot with rivers. So the river Anduin is literally just the Great River. And you can kind of match this up with the Anfalas, which is the Langstrand. And there you can kind of get the idea that Falas is the strand, An is the big or great or long part. And so therefore Duin means river, because An, great, Duin, river. You could pick this up all over the place. You've got, the Ered Nimrais, which is the White Mountains. And then you have the Barad Nimras, which is the White Tower, which we don't really get a whole lot of references to. But you can tell Orod, for example, is mountain. Ered is the plural, mountains. So the Ered Nimrais is just the White Mountains. And then you've got the word Amon, which is very similar. It basically means hill, but can also be used in like a mount type of sense. So you've got Amon Amarth, which doesn't really get used. Does that get used by Boromir? I don't remember if it gets used specifically by Boromir, but it's used somewhere where they stop referring to the Mountain of Fire as Orodruin, which literally means Mountain of Fire, by the way, but they changed the name to Amon Amarth, which is Mount Doom. And there you can even connect that back to the Silmarillion, where Turin takes the name Turambar, or depending on which Elvish language you're using, Turamarth, and get the idea that Amarth meaning doom there, the Tur is the rest of that name, which he translates as Master of Fate. So Master or Lord or something in that vein is what Tur means. So you've got a whole lot of these words that you can really just pick up kind of easily if you just pay attention to place names. And then, there's also the Emyn Muil, and I'm not sure what the Muil means in there. I'm not sure if it's ever actually translated, but Emyn is like the plural of Amon. And that's one thing that's pretty consistent in Elvish is nouns, when they become plural, mainly do so by changing the vowels. Don't change the structure of the word at all. You don't add S like we do in English. It's literally just a vowel shift. How the vowel shifts depends on what vowels you're shifting, and so you got to pay attention to that. But you can see that happen a lot because, like I said earlier, Orod and Ered. And then you've got some that are a little bit harder to figure out, but if you piece things together, you can still get. And for example, the wall that Denethor has around the fields of Pelennor is called the Ramas Echor. And the Echor, if you read your Silmarillion, there's the encircling mountains around Gondolin, which is called the Echoriath. And there the word mountains is not really present. But if you pay attention to other words that end in that iath, that usually means like a collective noun. So for example, Osgiliath, that's the city. The os signifies city or citadel. Gil is another word for star. Gil-galad is starlight. And then Ath means, so it's the city of stars, like the host of stars, not just, like a handful or something. So like the Echoriath is literally just the fencing things, really, is what the encircling mountains is. It's just like a big wall. That's kind of what it is. Or the encircling things, really, I should say. And then you've got others that, you could just go on and on and on down a map. Pick a map and start looking at names. You've got rivers like the Mithathel, which is translated Horwell, which means gray well. That's literally all it is. You've got other rivers like that too. That if you read enough of the text and then you pay attention to where they are on the map, you can get the English translation of the name even if the map doesn't have both names on it. One place where that can mess you up is the Baranduin or Brandywine. Brandywine is not a translation of Baranduin. It is a lazy mispronunciation of Baranduin. I believe Baranduin means just brown river, in fact. And so in some sense, the Brandywine River is kind of a reference to that because a Brandywine River would be brownish, but it's not a translation. So don't let that fool you. Another one, and this one actually had me messed up for a while too. You can mess up things if you think you're a little too clever for your own good. Because if you think about it, Ungoliant, the giant spider demon from the Silmarillion stories, and then you have Cirith Ungol, which is the pass of Ungol. You could think to yourself, that must mean spider. No, it doesn't. It actually means gloom or, something like that. Ungoliant is the gloom weaver. That's kind of her actual name. And then Cirith Ungol is the gloomy pass. And then you've got the Cirith Gorgor, which is the haunted pass, or if you look at I believe the plain of Gorgoroth is referred to as is it terror? Something of terror. But anyway, it's like that idea of it's haunted, it's terrible, it's, it's something really scary. And then you've got Udun, which is translated as hell, which obviously doesn't mean like hell in the Judeo-Christian type tradition sense of the word. It means something more like pit. So you've got that, and you've got other, mountain ranges that you can pick up on. You've got, let's see, the Misty Mountains is actually a weird one. It's Hithyglir. Heath is the one for mist, and you can tell that because in the Silmarillion, the land of Heathlum is a misty land, so there's that root connection there. The Aeglir, that word pops up somewhere else, and I don't remember offhand now where it is, but I know that shows up somewhere else besides just in the Misty Mountains. If anybody can remember that, put that in the comments, or I may find it myself and comment on my own video. So I mean, you've got lots of different place names that you can use to get a pretty good idea of what's going on there. There's tons of place names, tons of place names. Sometimes they don't get translated into Elvish though. So for example, the Eisenmouth, or the river that the Eisenmouth is the end of the river Eisen, I believe. Eisen is just like an Old English for iron, so that's not Elvish at all. So you got to be careful. Anything around Rohan is fairly likely to be an Old English Anglo-Saxon as opposed to Elvish, because the Rohirrim language is like translated into Anglo-Saxon by Tolkien for the purposes of the story. So you have to watch out for stuff like that. You do have other things though that are pretty easy, like the word Tol. Tol Brandir is the island of Brandir, and then you've got well, I forget the name of that island that's like in the, oh gosh, I can't remember now. I really don't remember now what it is, but I know there's another island where that pops up. There's also a reference to the idea in the Silmarillion that the place where Turin is buried and where Morwen, his mother, dies, later when everything gets completely destroyed at the end of the First Age, that remains standing above water and is called Tol Morwen. It's the island of Morwen. So, you know, you could pick just practically any spot on a map and find, you know, connections to words and things like that. You can also go with names sometimes. Of course, Legolas is Greenleaf. Leg is the green part, Los being the leaf part. Mithrandir is the gray pilgrim. Mithril is silver. It's a type of silver. So Mith is the gray or silvery element there, which means Randir means pilgrim or wanderer, whatever you want to call it. Some names we don't really have just obvious translations for, because some names are just kind of like we have in English. At this point, they've all lost their meaning and are just names. And Tolkien even says that about some of the names that, you know, are given to humans in the First Age in particular. They're not, or even the Third Age, they're not per se, they don't carry meaning necessarily. They're just kind of like Hurin and Turin. Hurin is Turin's father, and he gives him a name that kind of sounds like his own. So, I mean, it's like there's a thing there that you carry it on in a shape sense more than a meaning sense. But you do have names that do mean things, and if you look in the appendices, Tolkien will actually tell you, like, the hobbits' real names were these, and they kind of mean this. So Samwise, even it straight up says, you know, means half-wise. So Samwise is a half-wit. Kind of a weird linguistic joke on Tolkien's part. And then there's other names that you could look at. A lot of them don't necessarily mean anything, but some of them you will be able to pick out some of these root words and figure out what they mean. Another one would be Fangorn, Treebeard. That's literally, Orn would be the tree part, actually, I think, in that one. Yes, because the Longbeard dwarves are, I can't remember the name for the Longbeard dwarves in Elvish, but the Fang, I think, shows up, the Fang root word shows up in that as well. So Fang Orn is tree. And some people have even tried to put together the idea that Aragorn contains the same root, and therefore it must have a tree component to it. And I think, I don't remember if it was Tolkien himself or who it was, but I think somebody has actually said there's really not a meaning there. That's not a thing. That's just kind of the shape of his name because he's the son of Arathorn. I mean, it's just kind of like an ancestral thing, kind of like the Hurin-Turin thing. But you can pick up colors. You can pick up, you know, lots of different types of words by doing this. You know, the gray element and all these different things. And you have to be careful too, because like I said, you've got different words for star. Gil, or Ellen, depending on what we're looking at, and some of that depends on which Elvish language you're looking at. Sometimes it depends on the sense in which you're using it. And one way in which that's true is the word Estel, or hope. Tolkien ends up in one of the writings that's in the, I think it's in the History of Middle-earth series, or is it in the Unfinished Tales? No, it's in the Morgoth's Ring, in the debate of Finrod and Andreth. It's a reference to two types of hope. So there's Amdir and there's Estel. They both kind of mean hope, but in different senses. So just because two words, exist doesn't mean they don't mean more or less the same thing. So watch out for that too. But there's just endless varieties of ways that you can pick up on different aspects. And of course, I could pull out a map and go over tons more examples, but I don't want to overdraw this video into something obscenely long, because you could go on forever and ever doing that. Erebor would be another fun example, though. It literally means lonely mountain, pretty much. And the way you can tell that is because, or the lonely something anyway. I'm not sure if it's lonely mountain. It may not translate directly to that. But for example, in the Silmarillion, there's a hill called Amon Ereb, and it's by itself in the middle of nowhere. So it's, again, that idea of lonely. That Ereb is what that means. And speaking of famous ones, you've got Amon Sul, which is Weathertop. Sul doesn't mean weather. If we look at the Silmarillion again, we can see that Manwë's surname, so to speak, is Sulimo, and he's the Lord of the Winds. So Sul is kind of a generic word that can mean wind, weather, anything like that, really. And then, of course, some other obvious ones would be like the Barad-dûr, the Dark Tower. Barad, tower, dur, dark. Nazgul, that's black speech, so watch out. Nazg is the one for ring, and you can tell that because in the ring poem, Ash Nazg dur Batuluk, one ring, Ash Nazg, and it repeats that Ash Nazg over and over, so you know that's the one ring phrase. So Nazgul is ring wraith. You've also got Morgul, and this is actually an Elvish word, because it actually means like dark sorcery or something like that. It's got that Mor root. Mordor, black land. Gondor, stone land. Arnor, noble land. So, you can, and that's another thing you have to watch out for too, is the way that the words kind of change their shape depending on how they're combined. Arnor doesn't have the D that Gondor has or Mordor has. But that's just a function of how the root word is affected by what it connects to. So be on the lookout for that as well. But there's just, again, tons of different ways that you can look at this. There's endless possibilities if you just really pay attention. So there's kind of a brief primer on Elvish words that you can pick up pretty easily, and a few Elvish phrases that we get. If you want to learn more about Elvish phrases, like I said, you can look at the poems throughout the book that are actually translated for us from Elvish to English. Some of those are how we get things like Namarye. I think that's really the only reason we know what Namarye is from the text itself. But you could pick up some other stuff as well. Tons of other stuff. But anyway, that was pretty much what I wanted to get into here. There's not, like I said, a lot of conversational Elvish. You can really learn that easily. And I don't know enough to get into that level of discussion either. Like I said, I can link to my video on how to learn Elvish if you really want to get that deep. But anyway, if you did enjoy the video, please give it a like and share it around. And you can follow me on Twitter at JRRTLore if you want to get some occasional Tolkien-related trivia questions. You can, of course, subscribe to the channel here. Don't forget to click that bell icon and support the channel here, and find 2 of my previous videos here. Until the next time, I'm the Tolkien Geek, signing out for the Tolkien Lore channel. Namarye. In case you forgot, that means farewell.